What is going on, Dolphins fans? A lot has happened recently. We've had a couple of big trades. We've got a change in the outlook for the 2025 season, perhaps, and perhaps a change in the outlook for the franchise beyond 2025. A lot to unpack here. Been an interesting offseason. The training camp, which opens in about 3 weeks, is going to be even more interesting. Welcome to Dolphins Deep Dive with Perk. I am your host, Chris Perkins, your Miami Dolphins columnist for the South Florida Sun Sentinel. That is David Furones, your Miami Dolphins writer for the South Florida Sun Sentinel. Furones, how is it back on football instead of on Panthers duty?
Well, kudos to the Panthers for allowing me to realize what it's like to cover a champion. I know. I'm already starting with the low blows.
Yeah, the shade already, baby. I like it.
It was the caption that I put in an Instagram post where I had a picture of myself on the ice, and our buddy Josh Moser from WSBN, he was right next to me. He took a pic of me. You got Stanley Cup champions on the big jumbotron over the ice. I'm there on the ice. Because that's how you do the interviews after a team wins the Stanley Cup. You only know that if you cover a team that wins the Stanley Cup. So fortunate that down here working for the South Florida Sun Sentinel, I get to do that. Just every time they show up in the Stanley Cup final, I get to just jump on and cover the fun stuff of the Panthers in June, when I spend most of my time reporting on the Miami Dolphins. So now back to work on Dolphins.
That's it, baby. And hopefully you can bring the Dolphins a Super Bowl title, Furones. This is all on you. Well, I'm putting this all on you, Furones.
Yeah, so I'm going to take what I learned from covering the Panthers and then, see if I can impart that wisdom on the Dolphins. Although I hope Chris Greer, Mike McDaniel has been there. A bunch of players have been there, seeing what they got going on. A bunch of players are fans of the team. I know Chris Greer, I believe, is close with Bill Zito, the Panthers GM. I remember seeing him at Game 7 of last year's Stanley Cup when they won against the Edmonton Oilers the first time in 7. I remember seeing him waiting for an elevator to get up to what I assume would be his suite to watch the game. So, and I know the two franchises are tight.
Yeah, they are. So hopefully some of the Panthers magic rubs off on the Dolphins. Look, we always invite the viewers. We welcome you. We invite you to leave a comment or a question on our chat. The best place for interesting, intelligent Dolphins talk. Also like to remind you that if you miss any part of this show, you can catch the podcast on Apple, Spotify, iHeart, or wherever you get your podcast. So today, we're going to talk about whether the Dolphins are a better team after the Jalen Ramsey and Darren Waller trades. We're going to talk about the Dolphins' goal for 2025. We're going to talk about whether the Dolphins are equipped to win with youth, which is their new philosophy. And in our Furones bonus, David Furones will discuss the cornerback situation 3 weeks from the start of training camp. You know what we always say around here, there's an ocean of possibilities. Let's dive in. There we go, baby. I like it.
I almost forgot. I
know. We're all rusty. We're all rusty here.
But there's something about once you start building it up that it triggers in my head.
It comes right back. I like it, baby. All right. So, Furones, let's talk about whether the Dolphins are better after these trades. The Dolphins, of course, sending Jalen Ramsey and Jonnu Smith to Pittsburgh in exchange for Minkah Fitzpatrick and some draft picks. And they also traded with the New York Giants to get Darren Waller out of retirement, the tight end. Here's what I think, Furones. I think that Chris Greer and Mike McDaniel did the best that they could in difficult situations with Jalen Ramsey and with Jonnu Smith. You couldn't make those guys happy. I'm not paying a 31-year-old Jonnu Smith $10 million a year. It's just not happening. Jalen Ramsey is he's a different situation overall. Disgruntled, so there was really nothing you could do to make either of those guys happy under the current constraints. I think they did a good job of replacing the talent there. Waller for Jonnu. It's not an equal swap. And then, look, Minkah, I think, is as good at his job as Jalen Ramsey is at his job. My thing is, you're not a better team. You answered the questions that you had to answer, and you found a solution that you had to find. It wasn't easy, but you still don't have I would rather be good at cornerback than at safety. You're better at safety than you were. You're in the same situation at cornerback. And as far as tight end, look, Jonnu Smith coming off of a Pro Bowl is better than Darren Waller coming out of retirement. What I will say about tight end, though, is look, in 2022 and 2023, you didn't have a receiving tight end. I mean, you did in Durham, Smythe, and Gesicki, but it wasn't an 88 reception tight end. So your number 3 receiver could either be a tight end, a slot receiver, or a running back. So I think they did a good job, but you're not a better team than you were before those trades.
Yeah, you can look at it that way as far as the net gain / loss of talent. Or you can say how you started off, that they made the most of what started out as a bad situation. Listen, when the Jalen Ramsey trade situation first was revealed ahead of this year's draft, you looked at it and said, the Dolphins are stuck. They now have to get rid of their star cornerback, whom they just gave a new contract the previous summer to keep him happy 1 year into taking in his already handsomely paid salary. But you said, who's going to take an aging superstar making that kind of money? Well, you found a taker to cross that offseason checklist item off. You also found a solution for the other trade you had to make once you weren't going to triple Jonnu Smith's salary, after credit to Chris Grier for the great signing that was to snag a record-breaking tight end at $4 million when he was released from Atlanta the previous offseason. So you got to give credit where credit is due, is finding that type of deal before then Jonnu Smith ends up blowing up. And then, of course, whenever you do find a great deal like that, you're always going to have that player come back and look for more money, especially when, hey, he's getting into his 30s and he knows he needs to get paid before it's over for him. So when all that started, you thought you were getting a late-round pick at best, maybe creeping into the mid-rounds if you took on some of Ramsey's salary. Well, you settled both situations, got back a younger, similarly talented DB with Pro Bowls and All-Pros to his credit, to his name, who has positional versatility in the secondary, and Pittsburgh was willing to take on the money and then some. Plus, you got a favorable pick swap to tack on to the end of that. So, and then you had the next pass catching tight end lined up. It'll be hard for Darren Waller to stack up to what Jonnu did in 2024, but at least you had a solution there. Not to mention, of course, you already had a Nick Westbrook-Akine, who I think will work wonders as far as being that third receiver to take some of the pressure off of Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. You have Devon Achane, who's very capable as a pass catcher out of the backfield. So, but you did already have that pass catching tight end lined up. It was revealed the very next day in Darren Waller. So from that perspective, good job by the Dolphins and GM Chris Grier, who still, by the way, has a veteran cornerback signing to make. So they're not done yet.
Yeah, I agree. Look, again, you made the best out of a bad situation. So I give them total credit for that. Before we go on, let's say what's up to some of the folks here in the chat. B Stuck the Poet, what's up? Carl Becker, what's up? Peter McDowell, Dave Harbor, AV, JD the Great One, JC. What's going on? It's good to see all of y'all back here. Excellent to see all of y'all back here. Furones, let me ask you this: when you look at Minkah, what do you think he has left? I know the last 2 years he was a little bit down. I think one turnover produced, if I'm not mistaken. I still think he's got a good amount left in the tank. He's going to be an upgrade over Javon Holland and Jordan Poyer and Deshaun Elliott, some of your starting safeties from recent years. What does he have left, do you think? I think he can get back to a Pro Bowl season. All Pro, we'll see, but I think he could get back to a Pro Bowl season, and I think Anthony Weaver can get him there with the way that what he showed us last year with the way that he used Jalen Ramsey. I think he understands player strengths. I thought that he used Calais the right way. He used Sealer the right way. They helped Chop unlock his potential. So I have confidence in what Minkah can do.
Right, and here's a guy, not to sound like Chris Collinsworth, but here's a guy who was still making Pro Bowls even through some what we would call down seasons, looking at it from the outside. I know sometimes players get Pro Bowls based on maybe career achievements and and just, oh, we know he's that good, and someone gets voted in. We've seen some of those with the Dolphins in the past. I think Xavier Howard had one year where he wasn't quite up to. I think he was even telling us he didn't deserve to be a Pro Bowler, but he just got that based on having the 10-pick season before that and another 7-interception season. And Jalen Ramsey, his first year with the Dolphins, got the Pro Bowl for playing half a season. And sure, he had some great moments, had 2 interceptions in the Raiders game, but it's not like he was that phenomenal to make it off half a season coming off the injury. But sometimes players do get those accolades based off that. But when I see Minkah, he's a little bit younger than Jalen, so 28. He's a safety first by trade, and I know there's some talk in Pittsburgh about how the Steelers are going to use Jalen Ramsey. They might be thinking of moving him to actually a safety role because they already have cornerbacks from the previous draft class, and they just signed someone too. So on the boundary, so they'll use his positional versatility, same way the Dolphins did, and I think Anthony Weaver will. As well now with Minkah Fitzpatrick, and you have several versatile pieces in the secondary where Ifeatu Melifonwu has that in his game where he started off as a corner, converted to safety, and with Detroit he was playing so many different positions, whether it be a traditional safety in the box, nickel, corner. Remember, he started out on the boundary, so he still has that if you really want to, but probably not where you would have him for most of the snaps. Minkah Fitzpatrick can also come down into the box and be a nickel corner if you want to have some 3 safety packages, which I know Weaver can do. And with sort of the depth that he has there at the position now, with Melifonwu, Ashton Davis, you still have an Elijah Campbell, Patrick Morris, and Dante Trader are young guys that you're bringing up. So you'll have a lot of players that you could use and mix and match and see where they work well. Along with, not to mention, Kader Kohu can move around at cornerback between the slot and the boundaries. So a lot of mixing and matching that Anthony Weaver has at his disposal with Minkah Fitzpatrick, as maybe he would describe him as similarly that ultimate chess piece that everyone would always keep coming back to his famous quote from his introductory press conference about Jalen Ramsey.
We got this question. We're talking about is Miami a better team? B. Stuck the Poet asks, how well is Miami's roster constructed to match up with opponents this season? Here's how I would answer that. Offensively, you've got to see about the offensive line, right? Both tackles we'll see. Both guards we'll see. The tackles, Patrick Paul, unproven. Austin Jackson coming off of an injury. The guards, same deal. Jonah Sabayanaya, right? Sabayanaya? Hawaii, Sabai. Sabayanaya, boy, I'm going to mess that up all year. And James Daniels, they both have questions to answer. So there's questions on that offensive line. Otherwise, offensively, if Tua stays healthy, you've got Achane. We'll see what happens at tight end, but you got Tyreek and Waddle. You got NWI. You got Malik Washington. Offensively, you should be good. Defensively, let's see what happens in the secondary. But I think that front 7 can win you some games. If you have Chop and Bradley Chubb and Jalen Phillips and Zach Sealer putting pressure on the quarterback in the passing game and then against the run, look, you do have Zach Sealer. You've got Kenneth Grant, your first-round pick. You've got Benito Jones. You've got Jordan Brooks at linebacker. Your edge rushers are decent against the run. You can do some things. I don't, but to me, the big question with the Dolphins is, can you win a playoff game? I don't know that this team is built to win a playoff game yet, but I do think the floor should probably be 9 wins, 8 wins. 8 wins, I would say, should be the floor. I'm thinking they're a 9-win team. But they should be better than they were last year. I just don't see them at this point winning a playoff game.
Yeah, and I think we'll hit on that a little bit later in the show. Yep. But I do like you corrected your Savainaya pronunciation, and then you bounced right back and nailed James Daniels. You got that pronunciation down pat.
I'm good.
Good job on that one, Perk.
I'm good. Yeah, I'm a pro.
Yeah, so I mean the front 7 defensively is what you look for when you have these questions in the secondary. It's a plus now that you thought you were going to be like to the point that we were making earlier, you thought you were giving up Jalen Ramsey for peanuts, and then you end up getting someone who can help you right now in Minka Fitzpatrick.
Yep.
I mean, the draft came and went. We were thinking it's usually a draft pick that you get. It's a rare player for player type of deal. Yep. But the draft came and went. You didn't get a pick this year. I mean, if we're talking about Chris Greer and Mike McDaniel on the hot seat, and then you don't get a draft pick for this year, are we talking about a draft pick for a future regime? You don't want that. So they got a piece that can help them this year. They bring back Minka Fitzpatrick. That's a great story, just how he was a Dolphins first-round draft pick. And you traded him during a rebuild. I know him and Brian Flores back then. It was I wasn't covering the team that 2019 season. You can speak more to that. But that went awry, and then now you sort of right that, get him back here. So that's a cool little story as well.
Yeah, it is. It's funny how things come full circle sometimes in this league, isn't it? All right, Furones, let's move on to second segment. And this segment, I should say, is what's the Dolphins' goal for the 2025 season? I just stated what I think it should be. I think this team should win a playoff game. You've already done the 11-win thing. You've already done the wild card thing. It's time to get a home playoff game and win that home playoff game. To me, that should be the goal. What do you think the goal should be for the season?
Get back into the playoffs, really. I think that would be enough to save jobs, considering you look on paper, like the overall talent pool of the roster is slightly less than last year, and definitely the 2023 team. It's less than what you had in 2023. So I get the expectation to win one in the playoffs, and I don't want to act like we're backing off of what were the expectations for those years. It was such a win now rush. Like you had this window, you had to win now. They did not win within that window that we would say, and since have had to shed some salary, not able to bring back the talent that was homegrown, like Christian Wilkins, who, by the way, might have had a setback with the foot injury. I was seeing something out in Vegas maybe a week or two ago. So he didn't have a great 2024 season either. So maybe in that regard, you dodged the bullet. You don't know if things could have gone differently if he was in Miami, but you never know. Robert Hunt, Andrew Van Ginkel, all those players, Brandon Jones, who you would love to have still on this roster, who you developed and then let go by the wayside, and then now also sort of a little bit of a youth movement too, because you had your veterans and leaders in Calais Campbell and Teron Armstead, and now you're working to reshape the culture with some of those leaders not present. So it's that's just tough on tough. That now other guys, other voices. Zach Sealer has to be one of the main guys to come forward. Tua has to really grow. Tyreek Hill has to grow up to be one of these leaders, as he should have been all along. So I do get the expectation that you have to win in the playoffs, because that's what we've said all along. That, to me, would just solidify the decision to run it back at the top and continue forward with the combination of Greer and McDaniel. Like, at that point, then okay, well, these guys now accomplished something that the franchise hasn't in 25 years. Okay, yes, it was right. It was right to keep going. I think just getting back to the playoffs is enough to save jobs next season. Like, you don't have to blow it up just because you do get back into the playoffs and lose a wild card game. But I see them hovering around 500, the 9-8, 8-9 range, vying for a playoff spot late in the season, probably needing some help to get in week 18. This is probably what I envision, where it's a good start. But when I look at the schedule, I know you don't want to play the schedule game too much, but good start when you look at the schedule, and then it's just trying to hold on when you go through that tough second half and see where the chips fall at the end, where it's probably you need something else to happen week 18, and you're scoreboard watching when that finale is being played.
Yeah, and I don't have the schedule up in front of me, but I think the last 5 at the Jets, at Pittsburgh, at home against Cincinnati, at home against Tampa, and then at New England.
Those games are late in the year. Let me pull up the schedule.
That might be the last 5. But
those games you're saying are late, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the last five. So yeah, you're gonna have to win some road games. You're gonna have to beat some quality opponents, and we'll see what happens there as far as being a better team, because these are things that have tripped the Dolphins up in the past. So I'll ask you this, Ferrone, is that what are the last five? Is it at Jets, at Pittsburgh? Is that right?
So you go 18, 17, 16, 15. So week 14 at the Jets.
Yep.
15 at Pittsburgh on a Monday night. So
Yep.
that's all the storylines from the trades we just had. Come back home for a Sunday night against the Bengals.
Bengals.
And then it's Tampa at home and at New England,
Yep.
week 18, which New England, now Mike Vrabel over there. They made a lot of moves in the offseason, made a lot of free agent signings. So, and then before that too. So, I mean, you have the Saints at home before that stretch starts. It's the bye before that, which comes after the Spain trip.
Yeah.
But it's starting with week 9, the Thursday night game, at home against Baltimore.
Yep.
Playing the Bills after that.
Yep.
And then Washington. In Madrid. So that's a tough that starts the tough stretch sort of at the halfway mark, where I feel like most of outside of at Buffalo week 3, you got to win most of those games the first 8 weeks. Is it?
Right.
Yeah. Week 8 at Atlanta as then you shift over to, you're still going to be in October in week 9 because of a Thursday night game. But
it's tough. It's tough sledding. So let me ask you this, Furones. We're talking about, will the Dolphins be a better team in 2025 and expectations for the season. Let's dip our toe into the culture lake. And a couple of people have asked questions. Peter McDowell says, addition through subtraction in terms of team culture by letting Ramsey go. We need positive leaders to set that new team culture. And then, by the way, I want to welcome Dougie Fresh, Pete's Takes, Cat for Life, Sam. And then let's see, sticking to the questions, Dougie Fresh says, I work in D.C. with tons of Steelers fans. All of them talk about Fitzpatrick's locker room and leadership. Isn't this the opposite of what Ramsey gave our team? So, yes, the culture change, getting rid of Ramsey is part of the culture change. Yes, Minka should be better for the culture. What role do you think culture will or can play in the Dolphins reaching the playoffs, Furones?
I'm sorry, I was actually just distracted because we have Dougie Fresh watching
we do.
the show.
We do.
Is it the guy who was with Slick Rick?
Dougie Fresh, baby, yeah.
Wow, he watches the show.
Yeah, man.
I'm thrilled to hear that. Sorry, what was the question?
6 minutes. What role do you think culture change can and will play in the Dolphins making the playoffs, being a better team this season?
Yeah, well, it's needed, first and foremost. So I get the perspective of addition by subtraction in the sense of Jalen Ramsey, where now he's a guy who obviously perennial All-Pro, Pro Bowler, top of his position for years now since he came into the league 2016. Only positive things to say about him as a player and what he's done, what he's accomplished. But I just never got the sense of he was like a bought in. I'll lead guys. I'll teach guys at my position group. I'll take them under my wings. I mean, I don't know how much conversation him and Cam Smith have ever had being together the last 2 seasons. Right. Has he been bringing Cater Kohu along? All these undrafted rookies from last class and the youngsters that they're bringing up. I just don't think – I feel like he just kept to himself from what I would see in limited time in the locker room. He had his own routine. He had the preferential treatment of that he would come out. I don't know if I won't call it preferential treatment. We don't know what goes on internally, but he comes out after the team stretches because he's doing his own routine. And maybe he's even like munching on some snack that he's like bringing him out from the facility as then he does whatever he wants for his stretch. And he's not stretching with the team. You've seen this, right? I'm not lying to the people. We've seen the same thing.
Yep.
So, we don't know the full scope of what happens there when he's allowed to do that, when the rest of the team is out there stretching, doing their own thing. But so I do get that, and I believe he might have been one of the ones that was contributing to this tardiness problem, and maybe didn't see eye to eye with Mike McDaniel or believe in him as leader of the team. I could just, from his attitude, I could feel that. I could sense that he's a guy that would look down on others if he's not fully feeling like they're up to snuff. Treats us in the media the same way if we're asking just regular questions that we normally just ask anyone else, and he's not really into it. He's not going to give you anything. I know you've said it. You kind of have to really get into some real ball knowledge if you're really going to get something out of him. So he doesn't settle for mediocre. He doesn't try to bring mediocre up a level to rise to his level. So yeah, I can see what they're saying.
Yep. By the way, what's up to Shake Money? What's up to Rob? Who else did I see here? Brandon Wales 94 from Edinburgh, Scotland. How about that, man? Who else? Marcellus Temple. Who else? I saw another. By the way, Dougie Fresh said he's out of retirement, so that's that.
Okay, we can bring him on for a little beatboxing.
Exactly, man. Exactly. My issue with the Dolphins culture, it starts at the top. I think that they reward the wrong things. I think the contract extensions in 2024 went out for good stats as opposed to winning playoff games, which they didn't win a playoff game. I also think that this team is not serious in the locker room. And I think that, I've said this before, I think there's a necessary paranoia that has to go on in a pro locker room. Guys have to think, if I mess up, I'm going to lose my starting job. If I mess up, I'm going to lose my spot on the team. The Dolphins have the most complacent, easygoing, chill locker room I've ever been in. And that's great for us. They're all great guys. I have nothing against them personally, but that edge is not there. And whether it comes from Mike McDaniel, the assistant coaches, or the players, these are some of the things that I see with the culture. I thought the Florida Panthers had a different culture when they lost to Tampa Bay in 2022 in the second round of the playoffs, right? After being the President's Trophy winners as the highest scoring team in the league, they discovered that style doesn't win in the playoffs. We need to get tougher. So they make the Huberdeau for Kachuk trade. And now you're a more physical team. You take the battle to others. This is what I'm talking about with the culture change. I think the Dolphins are a little too finesse. So getting Jalen Ramsey out is going to help morale. I think it's going to help in a lot of ways. But I've still got to see some other things as far as culture change. And I do think that that's important in the outcome of the season. So we'll see what happens there.
Yeah, I like that you mentioned that this morning. Uncle Luther Campbell. Did you see this as well? Because he tagged both of us as well as our friend Omar Kelly, asking how come the Panthers are able to they were able to reconstruct their roster, get to this level. Now they're back-to-back Stanley Cup champions, and how come the Dolphins can never rise to that level? And when I responded to him, part of my answer was exactly that. Making the somewhat franchise-altering move in Huberdeau, which I know he was beloved by fans. A lot of fans didn't know what to think at that time. But for Kachuk, and then that just changed the mentality of the team to now. And this happens in the NHL, so it could translate to the NFL for sure, where physicality is so much greater in the Stanley Cup playoffs.
Right.
Something I've learned and heard several times from another friend of ours, Alan Poupart, who is a Canadian who understands hockey very well. He knows puck. We talk about knowing ball. He knows puck.
That's right.
All right. So.
Exactly.
So I've learned from him that physicality is to another level in the playoffs. So you need that to win in the playoffs in hockey. Right. I think that probably translates to the NFL as well. You're playing in cold weather. I know you're not big on the whole cold weather narrative, but physicality does help when you're in those conditions. Right? Some players, they don't want to tackle. They don't want to hit hard when it's cold and it stings a little bit when you're taking all that contact. And if you're more physical of a team, then you're ready for that. So they've done that with the emphasis on the trenches early in the draft. Kenneth Grant, Jonas Savainaya at one guard. Your highest priced free agent was another guard, James Daniels. Yep. So investing in the offensive line. Patrick Paul, who's now going to take over for Teron Armstead, is a big fella at left tackle. Still a little bit raw, but we got to see him develop. And then bringing in a couple of big-bodied backs as well. So, yeah, you see an emphasis on physicality. That it's tough to transform a team in that regard over the course of one off season, right. But there are at least some strides in trying to be more physical, and that's part of the culture.
Yeah, and I think they took some steps in being more physical last year with guys like Saran Neal and Jonnu Smith and Aaron Brewer. We've listed these names before, and so
they got rid of 2 of those guys. So
I know they did. I was hoping you wouldn't catch that.
Yeah, right. You're naming everyone that's not even.
No, I'm trying to give these guys some credit here, Furones.
Yeah, but Jordan Brooks for sure. You see, he brings it.
Right, Jordan Brooks. So I do think that they recognize that that's a need, and even last year they started trying to address it. So I give them credit for that. All right, Furones, you know what time it is now, baby. You know what time it is. This is a 4-segment show. You've got one of the top 4 segments. It's always requested. It's always getting better. It is time for the Furones bonus.
Oh, the Furones bonus.
I love it, baby. So here's the topic today. Today's topic is, who are the best cornerback acquisitions available for the Dolphins? And our friend Brandon Wales 94 from Edinburgh, Scotland, had sent in a question here. Could Xavier Howard be an option for us for our cornerback need? But Furones, what are the best options out there for the Dolphins? What do you think they're going to do?
Well, Asante Samuel Jr. would be my number 1 choice based on the combination of his age, his ability. Of course, the South Florida homecoming for the St. Thomas Aquinas kid. I actually covered his high school career on the high school beat for the Sun Sentinel. Covered him 3-time state champion, having a chance to make it 4 for 4 as a senior and as a 4-star recruit. The son of Asante Samuel, who had a ton of interceptions in the NFL. So I may be biased based on knowing him at such a young age and covering the early parts of his career. The only thing with him is you worry about that neck issue. You need some clarity on the outlook of his neck injury. So I have no way of knowing the medicals on that. I'm sure Dolphins brass has been looking into everything they can, trying to find out all the information. And maybe it's good that this has played out a little bit where the cornerbacks, most of them are still available outside of Jair Alexander. I know he became available quickly and then was picked up by the Ravens. But a lot of the names that we've been talking about in our coverage in the Sun Sentinel that we've mentioned on this program previously, a lot of those ones who have lingered from the first wave of free agency, they're still out there. I know Chris Greer and Mike McDaniel have both mentioned how that position has still remained one where those available free agents are still available. So this deep into the offseason. So it's not often that you still have this many options. But next would be Rasul Douglas, who is a good fit as a 6'2 cornerback. So good size, which you're losing now in Jalen Ramsey, turning 30 before the season. So there is that. Also would come from Buffalo. So a little bit of what you hope to get from Jordan Poyer last season, maybe in having that insight and bringing you talk about culture, you talk about physicality, and then bringing some of that into Miami, into this locker room. That possibility there if you bring in Rasul Douglas. I'd still be in favor of James Bradbury, who's getting up there. Shoot, does Stephon Gilmore have something left in the tank? So he's another one still out there, getting up there in age, but has done amazing things in his past. I wouldn't mind a return of Kendall Fuller at a cheaper price than when you released him. These things always happen. I know it happened with Emmanuel Ogbah last year. He was released for the cap implications, and then later on, you need a pass rusher right before training camp. When Shaq Barrett retired, boom, Emmanuel Ogbah was available and was working out. So if he's available at a cheaper price, but not as the CB1, maybe if he was the second guy, if like you bring one of the others and then Kendall Fuller is also there, then I'd love that. Well, you don't have to. You can have some competition with the Cam Smith and Storm Duck, and Cater Co, who's going to give you what he gives you as the slot, probably third corner. So I wouldn't be opposed to Kendall Fuller being back entrenched into that. And the elephant in the room, a return of Xavier Howard, who was out there and did not play in 2024. So the Dolphins are already bringing in they have a couple of players who did not play all last season, and Bradley Chubb, you're bringing him back from his ACL tear late in the 23 season. So he's got fresh legs. He's a great in practice. So it's not to say missing a season just immediately eliminates you from, now like your career's over or something. No, I mean, you can still bounce back once you do return from that. I think we're about to see that with Bradley Chubb. So I don't know to what level Xavier Howard is prepared for an NFL slate. I think just from some murmurs I've heard, I think he has been training and could be ready. He'd have fresh legs, not playing last season. And another example, Darren Waller didn't retired. Yeah, didn't play 2024. You bring him in. He had to sort of maybe recapture some of the passion for the game that was missing when he did decide to retire. But a lot of interesting things. I wouldn't be opposed to it. I wouldn't be. I don't know what we're getting in Xavier Howard at this point, but it'd be interesting, to say the least.
Yeah, look, I love X. I loved having him in the locker room. He's a fellow Texan, and so I bond with X. So I would love for him to come back. We saw him at Teron Armstead's retirement party. Yeah. So he looks like he's in good shape. He always looks good, but it's those knees that you have to worry about. Those knees. By the way, what's up to Ronaldo Mesa, right? Yes. What's up, Ronaldo? Good to have you in here. Who else had joined here? JD the Great One had something for you here. He says, JD the Great One says there's a reason why all these cornerbacks are still available. And so, talking to you about what the Dolphins will do, they do all have warts on them, and you mentioned some of them, Asante Samuel with the neck, et cetera, et cetera. Kendall Fuller, Kendall Fuller, I know, but that's an inside joke. I always called him Jordan last year. But he had the 2 concussions and a season-ending knee injury. So as JD the Great One says, there's a reason why all these cornerbacks are still out there. Are you scared off by that? Now, the Dolphins don't have many options. Are you scared off by that? And does it make you go back and think, boy, they should have drafted a cornerback in the 3rd or 4th round?
Yeah, I mean, that was what we expected of them in the draft. Obviously, prioritize Kenneth Grant, prioritize the trenches. So I think that there was a combination of, at that point, and yeah, they had Kenneth Grant higher on their board, but at that point, you still saw there were some corners who could be good, who could provide something still available. And I think the market was a little bit less at defensive tackle. So if you were between those two, you weren't sure about the Michigan corner, Will Johnson, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So yeah, I'm like 2 months removed from all the draft talks. So all those names I memorized. Now I'm gonna forget them.
Exactly.
But it was a lot between him. Jahdae Barron, he was still available at that pick, right? So a lot of people thought it was between those two, and clearly the Dolphins prioritized the trenches and giving Zach Sealer another big defensive tackle who can provide an interior pass rush too based on his athleticism inside. So, I think you had some options. You knew you had some options available out there at cornerback. Obviously, there's a reason they're still available. But then the second they get taken, then you're like, oh, well, they should. So if all of them were taken in the first wave of free agency, then you would have said, oh, well, you should have made a move for one of those guys.
Right.
But they are still there right now.
Yep. I want to say what's up to Gil Toro, Ty, Spin, Chris, Dance.
Oh, here's the other thing. Another thing on that is how much of that is also some of these players waiting on the Dolphins themselves, having the Jalen Ramsey situation to settle before they committed how much money they could spend on this cornerback signing. Because these corners, they see a great opportunity with the Miami Dolphins depth chart, I bet.
Yep.
So waiting for that chip to fall, that domino to fall before then, some of all these others then decide, okay, well then I'll go to this other team who has been in contact with me. So some of them might be waiting on the Dolphins to see if they are the choice here.
To put a bow on this, excellent Furones bonus. Yeah, that's right. So we haven't talked at all about the existing corners. Is there a starter on the roster among Cam Smith, Kendall Sheffield? I'm leaving a bunch of guys out. I'm just drawing a blank here. But is there can Cater play on the boundary if necessary? Is there a starting cornerback on the roster? Ethan Bonner. Do they have a starter? Do Storm Duck? They're coming back to me now.
Yeah, right. I mean, I see it as a lot of, you know what you're getting out of Cater Kohu? You've probably got some competition between Cam Smith and Storm Duck, who Storm Duck showed he can step up and play as an undrafted rookie, and then Cam Smith sort of had maybe a slight leg up on him once he got healthy again. Then he gets hurt again, so he's on again, off again. You're bringing in Artie Burns, who is a veteran now, former first-round pick, had some struggles once he got to the NFL in coverage. I know he was getting burned a lot when he was with the Steelers early in his career, and but so you're not expecting something phenomenal out of him, but just another depth piece that could play into that. Could play some special teams now at this stage in his career. So you drafted Jason Marshall. Of course, you have your Jason Matries and Isaiah Johnsons and Ethan Bonners, who were these undrafted players from seasons past. You got your B.J. Adams and Ethan Robinson, guys undrafted from this year's class. And you did mention Kendall Sheffield as well, who I think has stood out a little bit as sort of this dark horse, this veteran who he hasn't started in the league in a long time, but he is a player who could potentially rise to that level based on what we've seen in brief glimpses in OTAs and minicamp.
All right, Furones, let's migrate to our final segment of this show. And the final segment is, are the Dolphins equipped to win with youth? We've heard Mike McDaniel at least twice at the owners' meetings and after minicamp emphasize that they're going to try to win with youth and with draftees. And, you know, the thing is, the win now thing prevented them from stocking the team with young players. They were going for Bradley Chubb and Teron Armstead and Tyreek Hill, the older star players, the veterans who could get them there. Now you're shifting gears midstream. Are these guys equipped? You know, when we look at when I'm going to talk about younger foundational players for these purposes, let's say, you know, third year and younger, fourth year and younger, you've got Cater Kohu, Devon Achane, Chop Robinson, Kenneth Grant, Patrick Paul, Jonas Savaiinaya, perhaps Cam Smith, Storm Duck, Jalen Wright, Malik Washington. We'll see what happens with Channing Tindall and Eric Ezukama, Cam Good. Are they equipped to pull and look, and I say this, and now obviously you are still going to have Tua and Tyreek and Jalen Waddle, but can this plan of winning with youth, can you shift gears on the fly like this, knowing that you were win now and didn't really stock the cupboard with young players?
Well, yeah, because I think that was always the plan for once you got to this point, because you can't just go win now, big money to sign this guy, big money to re-sign this guy, big money in free agency over here, trade draft picks to bring in another veteran. At some point, then you can't just keep stockpiling those contracts for high-priced veterans. Then you got to reset. The word gives the wrong implications, but just restructure back to now you're building through the foundation of the draft. So you started that rebuild and going from 2018 to 2019 with that mindset. The quote unquote Dolphins don't want to say it. NFL proved in their investigation tanking right to 2019 tank year. Brian Flores. He didn't understand the assignment. He went out and won those games.
That's right.
But you go into that where you have the 3 first-round picks that year. You're building through the draft 2019, 2020. And then you start becoming ready to, after 2021, now you're ready to shift to, okay, now it's the 5 pick package for Tyreek Hill, trading another first rounder for Bradley Chubb, Teron Armstead, big money free agent signing, your trade for Jalen Ramsey. It's all these win now moves where you have 4-pick drafts for 22 and 23. So at some point, and I think they always understood, all right, you go through that win now window where you're all in, but then after that, it's right back to going to the draft. So now this was always, I feel, just the point where you go back to that because you run those veterans, you run that run its course, and then now it's time to go back to building through youth, stockpile 10 turns into 8 picks, bring in the rookies while you still have some of those veterans left over, but now you've got the next group as you still have that veteran group still on the roster.
And, Furones, the two franchises that I look to kind of as the blueprint for the Dolphins from this standpoint are the Rams and Tampa Bay, right? They both did the win now thing, bringing in Matt Stafford and Tom Brady. That era went, and they did kind of retool on the fly. Both of them have won a playoff game in the last 3 years, 2 years or 3 years. And I think that's kind of, from the win now to the kind of restock, I think that's kind of what the Dolphins are trying to do. The question is, are they capable of pulling this thing off? JD, the great one, says, wish the Dolphins kept more of the picks. And I understand that. Chris says, what do you think the benchmarks are for McDaniel to keep his job? I'd ask about Greer, but let's face it, if Miami wins more than 3 games, Greer's picking the new coach and quarterback. But when we're talking about this win on the fly thing, can Greer pull it off? Can McDaniel coach the young player? Can this be done from the top level? We talked about the players. Can this be done from the top, do you think?
Yeah. Well, with Mike McDaniel, I feel he's actually better suited to take on a youngster and bring him up, notwithstanding like a backup quarterback in Skylar Thompson, who that was sort of this regime's, this offensive coaching staff's pick late in the draft, trusted to be a backup quarterback at one point, and then we saw how that went. But for the most part, I feel Mike McDaniel, he made his mark in this league as such a good teacher, as a position coach or coordinator of run game at one point, and then turning into offensive coordinator, where he's so great at showing a player that he has their best interests at heart, and that's just how he rose through the ranks in this league. So I think that's at the foundation for him. So I've always felt, he's great for bringing along a young core. The question I had for him was actually coaching the situation that he did have to begin with, is a team that's ready to win now. And I think that's probably why as we know, and as the investigation proved, the Dolphins were pursuing Sean Payton, along with the Sean Payton, Tom Brady combination. So that where Sean Payton would have been, that's a guy who is ready to take on a win now situation and lead it to a Super Bowl. So that was, I always kind of felt like, all right, Mike McDaniel, first-time head coach, rising to the ranks, where now he's almost like closer to a peer of some of the older players. I mean, him and Calais Campbell had time in common in high school in Colorado. He had stories about this. So, and Calais Campbell's the guy is always going to respect his head coach. Right. But, when you're that close in age to some of your players, and maybe and not seen as being such a tough disciplinarian, that someone like a Jalen Ramsey may not look at you the same way as a established veteran who, and that's also partly on Jalen Ramsey. But yes, I do like McDaniel bringing up young players when he's got now a Chop Robinson, a Kenneth Grant, a Jonas Avainaya, a Patrick Paul. I do like him in that setting.
Yeah. Marcellus Temple says, I have a question. Why do people keep talking about X when we let him go because of poor performance and groin injuries? And then Brandon Wales.
And some off the field stuff too.
There was that off the field. Yeah, a couple of misadventures there. Brandon Wales says, I'd say backup O-lineman is also a concern with James Daniels and Austin Jackson. I'd bring Wynn back, Isaiah Wynn, on a 1-year deal. anyone gets injured on the O-line, and it's only Liam Eichenberg that can come in. So we're talking about the youth movement, but Xavier Howard, he's an option. James Daniels is not a young player. Austin Jackson, he's middle-aged. You're going to have to rely on him. But there was another a tight end question here about bringing in
this is middle age in the NFL. Austin Jackson is 25 still. He's
okay. Well, what year is this?
No, well, he was young. He was young when he was drafted.
Yeah, it's like his fifth year, though, right?
Yeah, is he still? He's played 5 years already.
But he's mid-career.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. That's a better way to phrase it.
Is he still 25? Because okay. August 11th he turns 26 before the season. So, but yeah, he was so young when he was drafted.
He was.
Yeah.
So talking about the youth, and Gil Toro says, how does trading Jonnu make sense, and you replace him with a player who's coming out of retirement just because Miami wants to nickel and dime players over peanuts? So, the question is, how far can you go with the youth movement? You've got to have some older players here, especially as backups and even as starters at cornerback. You're not going to start, a rookie and then Storm Duck at corner. So you have to have some young players here. So I'm not going to go all out and say you've got to have only third and fourth year players. You can't win like that. But where's the balance to you, Furones? At corner, you've got to have a veteran. You need one guy who's, 5-6 years into the league. Again, you can't go rookie and Storm Duck. So you do need to have a balance there. How big a balance do you need, though? Do you think? On the offensive line, you are going to have Patrick Paul and Savai Naya. That's a pretty good youth movement. In the backfield, you have Achane and Jalen Wright. That's Alexander Madison is there, but you got Ollie Gordon. That's a pretty young position. So the youth movement is kind of in effect, probably a little more on starting offense than defense. Although you do have Kenneth Grant and Chop Robinson and some guys. How far can they go with this youth movement, do you think?
As far as this season, expectations. I'm probably just hovering around for a playoff spot.
You're probably at the limit, right?
Huh?
You're probably around the limit. To me,
around of how much youth you could have to be successful.
Yep.
Okay, I see what you're saying. Because at corner, and we still have to see who that veteran signing will be. But whoever it will be, I think that person is going to lead the younger corners better than Jalen Ramsey did, who I think was disinterested in taking anyone under his wing. So, I think from that regard, then whoever's still pending to be that veteran signing. Plus, you have an Artie Burns as a veteran player at the position group still that you did bring in. Not someone who you have great expectations for as far as his contributions, but still someone who can be a leader. Great guy. I remember covering him since he was at Miami Northwestern and UM. You got a high character guy as well in him. So, you need a veteran presence in every position group. And then, it's okay to have that youth and develop them, which, I do think McDaniel is equipped for the development of players when he has them under his program. You need a little bit of that combination. So I think cornerback, you're still going to have some of it. And then other positions, you kind of just you mix and match it a little bit.
Yep. Let's see. Dana Bice is back. He says, OMG, the boys are back. I was about to file a missing persons report. I know that. Blame the Florida Panthers, Dana. It's not our fault. Blame the Panthers, man. Furones had to go and do some double duty there.
It was such a tough assignment. I had to go to Club 11 in Miami.
Right.
And cover the Panthers celebrating with the Stanley Cup. Great video.
It was.
Just constantly out there. So, and the story ended up being great because there was news with Sam Bennett saying he's not freaking leaving.
That's right. Exactly.
I censored it a little bit, but that's what he said.
Yeah, exactly, man. Hey, Finn Spin, the Mad Greek, says something very interesting here. The focus of the Dolphins culture shift is not just about younger, bigger, meaner, and nastier, all good stuff. The real focus is guys who have exhibited the trait of loyalty in the past. Um, let's talk about that. Do you think that, I guess all NFL players, I guess to an extent, are mercenaries or paid assassins, right? You're going to the highest bidder, not necessarily the place you want to be. You're going to where the money is best and the playing opportunity is best. Um, what do you think? Loyalty, I'll go first. I think loyalty is a part of it. I think though commitment, commitment to the team and commitment to winning is probably the bigger thing of the culture shift. Loyalty, I guess, could be a different term for it. I'm not poo-pooing that at all. But I do, yeah. I think Finn Spin is kind of on point here. That the bigger, stronger, faster stuff is great as far as the culture shift. But you need guys that are committed, right? That are going to show up on time and do what Mike McDaniel asked them. And they're going to share knowledge with other players. And they're going to be into the defensive system. They're not going to freelance, all of that. I think FinSpin has hit on a good aspect of the culture change, that loyalty or commitment is a big thing. I always talk about having more dogs in the locker room. I think FinSpin has got a good point here.
Yeah, loyalty, commitment, having dogs who are punctual. All right, let's have punctual, early arriving dogs.
Right.
Not sliding in through the what's the door for the dogs go through?
The doggy door.
Dog. Okay, I thought there was another word for it. Yes, doggy. Yeah, don't come in after it's dark. You come in on time. Come home on time.
Exactly.
Before you have to be there.
Exactly. Let's see here. What else did I have on here? By the way, we never did answer Chris's question. What do you think are the benchmarks for McDaniel to keep his job? And here's the thing. We don't know. Steve Ross just gave the quote about what was it? Something about I don't want to maintain status quo. But we don't
doesn't
know.
mean the status quo is enough, is acceptable. I forget.
But what is status quo? And is that a winning season? Is that getting to the playoffs? Because there's a big, if you say that status quo is getting to the playoffs, then exceeding status quo means you got to win a playoff game, right? If you apply logic, you don't want to just hit the status quo. You want to exceed the status quo. So I don't know what McDaniel has to do to keep his job. I think it's kind of a sliding scale. But I will say this once again, a couple of the things that Greer and McDaniel have done for this team is they have united that building. Under Flo and Greer, Flo and Gase and Philbin, you sometimes have people going in different directions with their own agendas. And I'm sure that Steve Ross loves going by there or calling and knowing that there's unity in that building. And you can't undervalue that. But I think they're also good men. I'm talking about Greer and McDaniel, and they're just as interested. I've said this about McDaniel especially. He's just as interested in creating better players, better men as better football players. So I think for some of those reasons, and look, Greer and McDaniel have not been terrible. I say that they've underachieved and they've disappointed. But they have not been terrible, neither of them. So I see why Steve Ross kind of gives them some leeway. I don't know what the benchmark is for McDaniel to return, but I see the reason that they're back this year. And if they win 9 games, I could see why Steve Ross would keep them.
Yeah, I said earlier in the program, I think winning or getting to the playoffs is enough to save jobs. But I could also see a scenario where they miss the playoffs, but under some sort of positive outlook where you see the future, you see the light at the end of the tunnel because you're seeing, you really have something in Chop Robinson. Right. Kenneth Grant, this youth movement, Kenneth Grant, Jonas Naya. These are really some strong building blocks. Maybe if Tua isn't the reason why, or I hate the injury excuse again with this franchise, but if there were some injuries that really debilitated your chances, and then you really just see that, wait, there is something special if it all comes together, even if the season isn't successful in terms of the results, but it is also a results-driven league and industry. So, yes, if we were asking these questions after everyone got all those contracts last year, and when that finale at MetLife Stadium came down, they had a really disappointing loss against the Jets when they weren't going to make the playoffs anyway because the Chiefs were resting against the Broncos. Then we were asking the question, and Stephen Ross felt the need to come out with a statement clarifying that he is keeping Greer McDaniel because it was going to be such a huge question mark. Then, yes, that's going to pop up again if this team falls short of the playoffs, because it will again be seen as falling short of expectations. You can't go through this whole window without winning a playoff game, still having that ugly 25-year drought and counting when you had such a win now opportunity available to you.
Yeah, this is a tough thing. It's a tough thing to get your arms around. What does Mike McDaniel have to do to come back? What does Steve Ross consider a good season? I'll add this also for Greer and McDaniel, that this year they're getting the books in order, right? They're the wild spending of, the Jonnu Smith contract extension was not happening. We'll see what happens with Zach Sealer. So that's something else I think Steve Ross would have to be a little happy about. We have this from Ronald Luison. I hope I'm not butchering this. Ronald Luison. When did we learn that Jonnu Smith wanted more money on his contract? Was this issue addressed before the draft? I wish we had drafted a tight end in the 5th round, Arondé Gadsden II. I don't know when we first knew about Jonnu Smith. I can't recall exactly when it was, but I do say this about Jonnu, and I was a huge Jonnu fan. I just can't see paying a 31, 32-year-old Jonnu Smith $8 or $10 million a year. Now, Jonnu turns 30 this
12,
year.
Right? He got 12 from the
He got 12. He got 12. I can't see paying Jonnu Smith that, because look, Jonnu is in a normal Dolphins year, which you're hoping that this is. He's no better than the number 4 offensive option, right? Behind Tyreek, Jalen Waddle, and Devon Achane. I'm sorry, and you're 30 years old, you're the number 4 offensive option. I can't give you 10. I can't give you 12. And then in 2026, when you're 31 years old and still the number 4 offensive option, I'm definitely not paying you that much. So
all that said, we love Jonnu.
I love Jonnu. Look,
we're just being real here.
Right. I'm a Jonnu fan. I was a big John. I talked to Jonnu in the locker room. I told him I was going to get him to the Pro Bowl, start his Pro Bowl campaign. But this is business. And so while you have fallen off at that position, I agree with that decision. So I don't know when the Dolphins knew. I don't know if they could have traded for Michael Mayer, the tight end with the Raiders, who supposedly was on the block. They got Brock Bowers. He's 23 years old, and instead you get 32-year-old retired Darren Waller, whatever. The Jonnu thing, I wouldn't have paid Jonnu. Sorry. I agree with the Dolphins on that.
Yeah. I don't know when it came up, if it was pre-draft, post-draft. Obviously, the information came out post-draft.
Yeah.
So would the Dolphins have done something different with even the first-round pick? Tyler Warren was there. He who I did at one point have in my mock draft.
You did.
Not with the foresight that all this would play out with Jonnu Smith, but because he was such a good balanced tight end who I think could be an inline blocker while also contributing in the pass game. And the Colts rushed that card to turn it in, saying they're picking Tyler Warren immediately after the Dolphins. I mean, we didn't have the stories up yet on Kenneth Grant, and the Colts already made their pick. That was the fastest pick of the whole Thursday night of the draft.
Yep.
It was already 15. The Colts were picking 14. They were already on the 15th pick once we looked up after writing about Kenneth Grant. So, yes. So would you have done that differently with that knowledge? Who knows? I mean, maybe the Dolphins still had their board that way with Kenneth Grant. He was a targeted pick. the Dolphins told us. So I think they really like Kenneth Grant, but it is interesting how maybe you would have done something differently, unless they just really know Jalen Conyers, that undrafted rookie, is going to be something special. Which you brought in Julian Hill, undrafted, Tanner Connor. They like these guys. Jalen Conyers, who now as a new spelling of the name Jalen, as a Jalin to the roster. Whereas now you don't have a Jalen with Ramsey traded. Right. You have Jalen Phillips, Jaelan, and Jalen Waddle, Jay, along with Jalen Wright, Jaylen. Yep. Some facts for y'all. Wrap this up.
That's right. You got to have plenty of Jalen's on this team, right? A couple of more here. Big picture. Pete's Takes says, got to rewind and catch the rest. But is this team a Super Bowl contender now? And then Dave Harbor says, wow, not winning a playoff game, but showing some promise of something better in the future is a successful season. And so between
not a successful season, but that would show you that you have something that you're building, where then I could see a scenario. It's got to be an extreme where I don't know how you would still see it if they miss the playoffs, but it's just I guess you'll know it when you see it. But it's like a very small percentage on the pie graph of possibilities. Like
that's right.
Like this Venn diagram position where they suck during the season, but you still see some positive outlook for the future. I don't know what it'll look like, but if we see something like that, then I can understand.
Yep. And he said not winning a playoff game as opposed to missing the playoffs. Look, I can see, and look, we could see a situation where, they win 11 games and maybe they beat Buffalo twice, but then you lose your playoff game. I mean, that you're right. I mean, like you were saying, there's slim exceptions.
I'd take a Buffalo split.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
If they sweep Buffalo, then everyone sign them up for another eight more years. That's what everyone was chanting for the Panthers players for Sam Bennett.
Exactly.
If they could sweep Buffalo in 2025, sign everyone up for 8 more years.
That's right. Exactly. It's a very nuanced situation. Basically, there's no hard win total. To me, and really, I'm big on you got to win a playoff game, but even that is nuanced, like I just said. So that's what I think, but we don't know the benchmark, and no, they're not a Super Bowl contender right now. But could it be a successful season without winning a playoff game? I don't think so from where we sit right now. But again, it's very nuanced. Let's see what happens during the season. It's not as easy as just saying you've got to do this or else that. So, although I do that. No, I do that. I do say that.
You give them ultimatums. Huh?
But it's not easy. I'll just say that. It's not easy for me to do. So, it's not easy to say, as I said. So, all right, that's going to wrap it up for this edition. Hey, it was great being back. We will let you guys know via social media when our next show is going to be. But hopefully there's one before our training camp preview. Hopefully there's another show. We'll see what happens. We'll see if Tyreek has another foot race. We'll see if he boxes Jake Paul. We'll see if Jake Paul, who is now ranked by the WBA, by the way, Tyreek challenged him to a fight like years ago on social media. So we'll see. Tyreek might do something and spice us up. And
make sure to plug our Countdown to Camp series.
Oh, yeah. Why don't you do that? We've got a Countdown to Camp series.
Okay.
Plug it, Furones.
I just said it. Yeah, we'll have 10 storylines, 5 apiece, before training camp starts on, it's July 22nd, right?
Oh, boy. I don't know the exact date.
I think that's, is that the before date, and the first practice is 23rd? I got to look at the calendar.
I know. This show is falling apart at the end. It's really falling apart.
But in the days leading up to it, we will be putting out 10 storylines to watch during this camp and then the season. So make sure to check that out, sunsentinel.com.
There we go. That's the way to wrap it up. See, you're the professional here. All right, that's David Furones. I'm Chris Perkins. We'll see y'all next time. Appreciate it.